Hey everyone, I'm Russ Frushtick from Polygon. We are here with Ken Levine.
Hello.
Ken has made quite a few games we've probably played, BioShock and now BioShock Infinite being the most recent. So BioShock Infinite, it has been quite some time since I first saw it. How has it changed since then?
Well, I think we showed it earlier in the cycle than we normally would have showed it, and the reason is we were very nervous about the fact that we were working on a BioShock game slipping out there and getting out in the public, because then people would immediately think it was a Rapture game, and there'd be a lot of conversation. And what happens on the internet is sometimes like things get solidified. So I knew to root out that notion about it being in Rapture would be a huge amount of work and really burn up so many cycles when you're trying to introduce this game to people. We wanted to really get the vision of it out there before it became, we want to control that moment. Sure. And so yeah, so it was basically just hey, this is what the world looks like. These are the characters. This is the basic sort of setting and the kind of themes we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. But it was really a function of wanting to get out there. Ideally, the first demo probably would have been the E3 demo.
Specifically with that demonstration that you guys showed off, was it essentially like a ton of work that went into this thing that was not really going to be part of the game? And how did you guys feel about that? Couldn't that have just been a trailer that you guys put out to let people know about it?
To me, the demos are very important, even if they don't have they're not part of the game.
Sure. Because
they inform us on what works and what doesn't work. Like for me, that demo specifically was about the visual of the game, what the world looked like. Yeah. And that really did establish that.
How far into the process, were there large chunks of the game that got extremely far into the process and then just never coalesced and just didn't make it?
Oh yeah, look, trust me, I wrote a couple of levels that it turned out that, you know what, we don't have time to execute on these. And so, Ken, you need to go back and throw those out and then restitch the story together so it makes sense. But to me, that's part of the job. Yeah. You know? When that happened, I was just like, well, okay, let me go, let me take out my sewing kit and stitch it back together. And generally, it makes a better game, I think.
I'm curious, there's certainly a push these days in the games industry to create long-term value for games. How do you feel about sort of this push towards preventing people from essentially trading games in? A lot of games have integrated multiplayer and where it doesn't really feel right.
To me, it's not about multiplayer because it's not about any one thing. It's about creating value for the gamer, right? You always have to make trade-offs on what's going to give the package that has the largest amount of value for the gamer. Mm-hmm. Because that's what it is. It's no one thing. And multiplayer is especially tough because you make choices if you're doing multiplayer about your single player, how your physics system works, how your animation system works, that you sometimes have to compromise to, between the two to get the right mix where we didn't really want to make those compromises.
Yeah. So what I played still felt very much like an introduction to the world and to the environment, stuff like that. Curious how much the game, as you go later into the game, fall closer to the format of BioShock in the sense that hub world exploration.
Yep, by the next level you start seeing more of a hub, and then by the following level it's even more. And because it gets more hubby as the game goes on. Sure. Just like BioShock 1, the opening of BioShock 1 is very sort of linear and
but also short, only 20 minutes, I would say.
When that was incredibly controversial in the game. When there was no shooting, there was a time where there was a gun in the lighthouse. Really? An enemy in the lighthouse.
You just shot the enemy?
And we had a lot of internal debates on that and we kept moving the guns backwards and forwards because it was well, it's a shooter. People were going to want to shoot. And then there was the other camp, which was well, we have this opportunity to create mood. And once the first gun goes off, you sort of, a lot of options disappear for you.
Sure.
There has to be X amount of stuff going on in a game. And the more the player is doing, the less the world has to do at that time. But the less the player is doing, because in the beginning you're basically just an agent walking around and observing, and that gives you the opportunity really to make that incredibly dense world interaction. And by the time you get through that, you get a really good sense of what Columbia, or at least the founders, are like.
Mm-hmm. The introduction, obviously, with the lighthouse and that whole thing, and the opening the box and having the gun there, this all obviously ties back to the original. Does it bother you that it happens so early? That was always the intent, to make those connections so early on?
No, because I think this game is, though it's very similar in a lot of ways, it's also extremely different. I mean, you're a character and you haven't gotten to Elizabeth yet.
Sure.
And that experience of the game, once you have this companion with you, this partner with you, it becomes really a character piece. Nothing in the game is about being cute, nodding to the first game. There's people immediately feel the threads, but what those threads actually mean is something that people are going to have to figure out.